I'd like to start my presentation with a question. When was the last time that you had a rental car and before you turned it in, you washed it? That same question was asked by my college economic professor back when I was an undergraduate student. Now, after the laughter had subsided from the lecture hall, it was clear my professor had made his point. There's an inherent difference in how we treat things that we own versus things that we rent. Using that example of the rental car even further, let's say that you scored a table at the hottest restaurant in town. But now you gotta find parking at the hottest restaurant in town. But you're in your rental car and you think, oh, this has gotta be my lucky day. There's a spot really close to the front door. And as you drive up in the rental car, you turn and you go, oh, no wonder this spot is available. Both of those people parked so close to the line, I can barely fit in here. But I am in a rental. Now, we all know if that was your own car, you would never make a decision to park there. In fact, let's think about if you had your own car and it was the one and only car you could ever have for your entire life. Can you imagine how hypervigilant you would be about taking care of it? You would make sure you go in for regular oil changes. You would make sure that you have ample tread on those tires at all times. You'd probably have your car mechanic on speed dial. Why then are we not hypervigilant about taking care of our bodies and our health when we know we only get one for our entire life? And then I thought, well, maybe we just don't value our health. So I did a survey of 100 people, and I said, you can have health but not wealth, or you can have wealth but not health. Which would you choose and why? 97% of the respondents said, well, health, of course. Without your health, you don't have anything. Now, the 3% that said wealth didn't believe these were mutually exclusive. They felt if they had enough wealth that somehow they could purchase good health, as though health is some type of a commodity you can simply write a check for. So we know our bodies are our own. We only get one. My survey showed that we actually value health. The fact that we behave in a manner that doesn't necessarily support good health have anything to do with intention? There was a study that I read that talked about how participants were able to choose a snack for an upcoming meeting. The two choices were a banana and chocolate. Interestingly enough, most people chose the healthier option of the banana. Now, I'm assuming the chocolate wasn't of the dark variety. However, on the day of the actual meeting, the snack table was stocked with enough chocolate and bananas for everybody. And when the study participants went through the line and they chose their one snack, more people actually chose the chocolate than chose the banana. So even though they intended to do something healthy for themselves, when the real action happened, they were out of alignment, right? But how often do we do this, right? I intend to start eating healthy. I intend to start exercising. I intend to stop smoking, right? We also know there's a saying that the road to blank is paved with good intentions, right? So, if our bodies are our own, we only get one. My survey says we value health, and we actually intend to take care of our bodies. Where is the breakdown? I believe the breakdown has everything to do with how we make the multitude of seemingly insignificant decisions every single day, week, month, and year of our lives. But first, I want to talk about teenagers. For those of you who've ever raised teenagers, what is our biggest concern about raising teenagers? And it's not their lovely little attitudes. The biggest concern about taking care of teenagers is they are so short-sighted, right? All they care about is what's going on in the moment. They don't think about the long-term repercussions of the decisions they make. And in fact, if we have to sit one of these teenagers down after they've made one of these less than desirable decisions, what do they say to us? Well, seemed like a good idea at the time and seemed like a lot of fun, right? Now, we can also know from human development that the frontal lobe of our cerebral cortex is not fully developed in our teenage years. So on some level, it's probably not their fault. However, I would argue that we have the teenage brain when it comes to making the multitude of decisions that we make throughout our life that have a negative impact on our health. What do I mean by that? So let's say, for example, that everything above this would be considered conscious or significant. I used to be an auditor at Arthur Andersen and KPMG. We would have called these things material decisions. Now let's say that we partake in something a lot of us do. On our way to work, we like to stop off at our favorite coffee shop and buy our favorite latte. To me, that seems like it'd probably be insignificant decision, right? Not very material, you can part with $5 and not really impact you. And because we're creatures of habit, we do it again the very next day. And so on, and so on, and so on. All of these decisions don't hit our radar. They're way down here. What if we were to spend $1,300 on something? Boy, that seems like a lot of money. To me, that would be significant. In fact, if I were about to spend $1,300, I would look at the pros and the cons before I'd part with that much money. However, if we go to the morning coffee shop over an entire year and we start to add that all up, it equates to $1,300. It's just that this decision we thought about, and these $5 incremental decisions, we didn't. So we spent $1,300 over a year without even knowing it. Let's use an example of something that may happen with our health. So let's say on a typical day, maybe you have lunch, and then you end up having a cookie. Well, that doesn't seem like a big deal, does it? That's like a $5 decision. What about if later on in the afternoon, you're hungry, so you have a brownie for a snack? Again, in isolation, totally insignificant. Maybe that night for dinner, you decide to have steak and a baked potato. Again, $5 insignificant decision, right? And who are we kidding? These are fun decisions to make, aren't they? Would you like a cookie? You bet I do. Would you like a brownie? Does it have frosting? What about steak and baked potato? Medium rare, please. And I'm from Wisconsin. Can you load it with cheese? Right? These are really fun, enjoyable decisions to make. Who does that sound like? The teenage brain. Seems like a good idea in the moment. I didn't think any harm could come from it. So how is it that we get out from operating with the teenage brain in our daily decisions? I would say you should declare yourself to be the CEO of your own health. Now, why do I say you should be the CEO of your own health? Well, number one, CEOs do not fly blind. A CEO would not allow all of these decisions to be under the radar. They would say you cannot manage what you do not measure. So they would say, what did I eat this week? They would look at how many times I exercised this week. They would look at how many times I actually partake in activities that are good for my mental well-being. Because CEOs would say you cannot manage what you do not measure. The second reason is CEOs are proactive. Can you imagine if you had one car and one car only, that you would abdicate the responsibility to ensure that you get your regular maintenance to the auto mechanic? Are you kidding? Right? The stakes are too high. Hello, Charlie, the mechanic. This is my make, this is my model, this is the year, what am I due for, right? You would never abdicate that responsibility. So why do we abdicate the responsibility to our health, to somebody else? I'm in healthcare. I know a lot of you don't go to the doctor. I know a lot of you who do go to the doctor don't listen, right? I would have my doctor on speed dial. Hello, Dr. Smith. Here's how old I am. Here's my gender. What are the tests, screening tests I need to have this year? Oh, you say a colonoscopy? Great! When is your next available appointment? I need to get in, right? Don't abdicate that responsibility. The last reason I say you should be the CEO of your own health is because CEOs will take on the ultimate responsibility for success or failure of an organization. And I'm not talking about blame here. I'm talking about mitigating risk. If you wear a seatbelt and you get in a car accident, it does not eliminate the risk that you will be injured. It does mitigate the risk of your injury. If you eat right and you exercise and you do everything for your mental well-being, it does not guarantee you good health. It sure does mitigate against the risk of poor health. And I'd like to end by going over a fable that many of us are familiar with. So it's the fable of the frog and the boiling water. Now, I would think boiling water is kind of significant, right? So the fable goes that if a frog is put into boiling water, he immediately recognizes he's in danger and he jumps out of that boiling water. But that same frog that is put into lukewarm or tepid water is completely oblivious to the environment he is in, and he will stay there, and his environment changes ever so slowly until, unfortunately, he suffers an early demise. Ladies and gentlemen, when we make our multitude of decisions below the line here, day in and day out of our lives, what we do is we are also suffering the same fate of that frog. We too are in very dangerous water that we don't know about. And over time, we could develop chronic disease. Over time, we could develop debilitating disease. Or we could unfortunately croak early like the frog. My call to action to you is right here, right now, declare yourself the CEO of your own health. And with that, I'd like to say thank you.